The champagne glass trembled in my hand as Derek's voice cut through the elegant chatter of the company holiday party. Chinny marketing. Come on, guys, that's not real business like what we do here in finance. His colleagues laughed, and I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. Lily should be grateful I even claim her in public. He continued, gesturing dismissively toward me, like I was some embarrassing accessory he had to tolerate. The room fell silent for a moment, everyone staring at me with a mixture of pity and secondhand embarrassment. I forced my lips into what I hoped resembled a smile, but inside something cracked. Derek turned back to his coworkers, already moving on to discuss quarterly projections as if he hadn't just shattered my dignity in front of 50 industry professionals at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Standing there in my carefully chosen navy dress, watching Derek laugh with his colleagues as if nothing had happened, I realized this wasn't the first time he had belittled me, but it would definitely be the last time I let him get away with it. The crystal chandelier above us seemed to mock me with its brilliance, casting shadows that felt like they were swallowing my self-worth whole. I had spent 2 years building my career as a marketing professional, earning my senior marketing director position through countless late nights and successful campaigns. But Derek made it sound like I was playing dress-up in the corporate world, a child pretending to understand grown-up business. The worst part was how natural it seemed to him, how easily the cruel words rolled off his tongue. The party continued around me, but I felt frozen in place, clutching my champagne and wondering how I had ended up dating someone who could humiliate me so casually. Derek's boss, Mr. Patterson, gave me a sympathetic look before turning away, clearly uncomfortable with what he had witnessed. The other wives and girlfriends in attendance suddenly found their phones fascinating, avoiding eye contact with the woman who had just been publicly dismissed by her own boyfriend. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to collect the pieces of my shattered confidence. In the mirror, I saw a successful 28-year-old marketing director who had somehow allowed herself to be reduced to an embarrassing footnote in someone else's success story. My reflection stared back at me with wounded eyes, but beneath the hurt, I recognized something else beginning to simmer. Derek found me by the coat check later, acting as if nothing had happened. "Ready to go, babe, great party, right?" His casual tone made my stomach turn. He had no idea what he had done to me, or maybe he did, and simply didn't care. Either possibility filled me with a cold determination I had never felt before. As we walked to his car through the December evening, Derek chatted about his potential promotion and how impressed his colleagues were with his presentation. He never once acknowledged what had happened inside, never apologized for making me feel like an unwelcome guest at my own boyfriend's company event. The silence between us grew heavier with each step, but Derek seemed oblivious to the shift. That night marked the beginning of the end, though I didn't know it yet. All I knew was that something fundamental had changed between us, and I wasn't sure I could ever look at Derek the same way again. The man I thought loved and respected me had just proven that he saw me as nothing more than a liability to his professional image. 3 days after the party, I discovered the real reason behind Derek's public humiliation. I had stopped by his apartment to return his spare key, having decided I needed some space to think about our relationship. Derek was in the shower and his phone rang repeatedly on the kitchen counter. When it rang for the 4th time, I glanced at the screen and saw his boss's name flashing. "Derek, you there? Pick up, man." Mr. Patterson's voice came through the speaker when the call went to voicemail. "Just wanted to confirm you're still planning to present yourself as unattached for the Singapore position. The board loves candidates who can relocate without family complications. Call me back." Duh. My blood turned to ice water. Derek had been lying to his company about our relationship status, positioning himself as a single man ready to take on international assignments. The party humiliation wasn't just casual cruelty, it was calculated strategy designed to make me break up with him so his hands would stay clean. I set the phone down with shaking hands and heard Derek's shower turn off. When he emerged from the bathroom, whistling and completely unaware that his deception had been exposed, I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. This was the man who had told me he loved me, who had talked about our future together, who had convinced me to introduce him to my family last Christmas. "Hey babe, what's wrong? You look pale." Derek's concern sounded genuine, which somehow made his betrayal even more painful. He could still perform caring boyfriend when it suited him, switching between manipulation and affection with terrifying ease. Nothing's wrong, I managed to say, though everything was wrong. I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow. I should head home. Derek didn't argue or try to convince me to stay, which told me everything I needed to know. The old Derek would have pulled me close, made coffee, and insisted we spend the evening together. This Derek was probably relieved to have his apartment back so he could continue planning his exit strategy from our relationship. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through every interaction we'd had over the past few months. Suddenly, Derek's recent behavior made perfect sense. His reluctance to make future plans, his sudden criticism of my career, his insistence that I not attend his work functions anymore. He had been systematically dismantling our relationship while making me think I was the problem. My best friend Sarah called just as I walked into my apartment, and I found myself pouring out the entire story. Sarah worked in human resources at a major consulting firm, and she had never liked Derek, though she'd been diplomatic about expressing her concerns. "Lily, I have to tell you something," Sarah said after I finished recounting the phone call. "Remember that networking mixer last month at the Marriott, the one Derek said you shouldn't attend because it would be boring?" I remembered. Derek had convinced me that the event would be full of stuffy executives who wouldn't appreciate my marketing perspective. He'd suggested I spend the evening relaxing instead, and I'd been grateful for his thoughtfulness. "Derek was there," Sarah continued. "I saw him talking to Amanda Peterson. You know, the board member's daughter. They seemed pretty cozy, and when I mentioned you, he said something about how you were just a temporary situation until he found someone more suitable for his career trajectory." The words hit me like physical blows. Derek hadn't just been planning to leave me. He had been actively pursuing my replacement while telling mutual acquaintances that I was a placeholder. The level of calculation and coldness required for such behavior was staggering. "There's more," Sarah said gently. "I've heard from other people that Derek's been telling anyone who'll listen that you're not serious about your career, that you're just playing at being a professional until you find someone to take care of you. He's been undermining your reputation in circles where you don't even know he has influence." I sank onto my couch, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Derek hadn't just betrayed me personally. He had been sabotaging my professional reputation as part of his grand plan. Every casual comment about my career, every suggestion that I was being too ambitious, every time he'd made me feel like I was overreacting to workplace challenges, suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying conversations looking for signs I had missed, wondering how I could have been so blind to Derek's true nature. The man I had trusted with my heart and my vulnerabilities had been systematically working to destroy both. By morning, my sadness had transformed into something harder and more focused. Derek thought he could manipulate me into walking away quietly, leaving him free to pursue his promotion and his new relationship without any messy complications. He had underestimated me completely, assuming I would accept his version of events and fade gracefully into the background. He was about to learn just how wrong he was about that assumption. If Derek wanted to play strategic games with people's lives and careers, then I was ready to show him what a real strategy looked like. The next morning brought a revelation that made Derek's betrayal even more sinister than I had imagined. I arrived at my office early, determined to throw myself into work and start rebuilding my confidence. My assistant Janet greeted me with her usual cheerfulness, but I noticed she seemed nervous about something. "Lily, I need to tell you about some emails that came for you while you were out last week," Janet said, wringing her hands. "That gentleman friend of yours, Derek, stopped by and said you'd asked him to check your messages since you were feeling overwhelmed. I thought it was sweet that he wanted to help, so I let him use your computer for a few minutes." My stomach dropped. Derek had never mentioned stopping by my office, and I certainly hadn't asked him to check my emails. "What exactly did he do on my computer, Janet?" "He said he was just clearing out spam and organizing your inbox to help you stay focused. He seemed to know what he was doing, and he mentioned that you'd been stressed about keeping up with industry networking opportunities." I rushed to my computer and began searching through my email folders. What I found made my hands shake with rage. Derek had systematically deleted dozens of professional correspondence, including invitations to speak at marketing conferences, requests for collaboration on high-profile campaigns, and networking opportunities with industry leaders. He had also moved important emails from potential clients into my spam folder, making it appear that I was ignoring business opportunities. The most devastating discovery came when I checked my deleted items folder. Derek had removed emails from my former boss, Catherine Williams, who had been trying to reach me about a position with her new company. Catherine had started her own marketing consultancy and wanted me to lead their digital strategy division, but Derek had made sure I never saw her offers. I immediately called Catherine, my heart pounding, as I prepared to explain why I had seemingly ignored her attempts to contact me. Lily, I was starting to think you weren't interested in the position. I sent you several emails over the past month, but when I didn't hear back, I assumed you were happy where you are. Catherine, I never received those emails. I think there may have been a technical issue with my system. I said, not ready to reveal the full truth about Derek's sabotage. Would you be willing to tell me about the opportunity again? Catherine's excitement was palpable as she described her vision for the consultancy. She wanted to build a team of innovative marketing professionals who could challenge the traditional finance-dominated corporate culture. The position she had in mind for me would involve working directly with Fortune 500 companies to revolutionize their marketing approaches with a salary nearly double what I was currently making. The only reason I thought of you first was because of that brilliant campaign you developed for the Morrison Group last year, Catherine continued. James Morrison specifically mentioned your work when I told him about my plans. He said you were one of the most strategic thinkers he'd encountered in years. James Morrison, Derek's potential future boss, the man whose company was courting Derek for the Singapore position. The irony was staggering. While Derek was trying to position himself as indispensable to Morrison's company, Morrison had been praising my work to industry colleagues. After ending the call with Catherine, I sat in my office trying to process the magnitude of Derek's interference in my career. He hadn't just been planning to leave me. He had been actively working to ensure that I would have fewer professional opportunities when he did. The cruelty of such calculated sabotage was breathtaking. My colleague Tom knocked on my door, interrupting my thoughts. Tom was a graphic designer who had worked with me on several successful campaigns, and he had always been straightforward about industry politics and office dynamics. Lily, can I talk to you about something? I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I wasn't sure how to bring it up. Tom's expression was serious as he settled into the chair across from my desk. What's going on, Tom? It's about Derek. I've seen him at a few industry mixers over the past couple of months, and he's been saying some things about you that don't sit right with me. He told people at the Creative Awards ceremony that you were thinking about stepping back from your career to focus on personal goals. He made it sound like you were losing interest in professional advancement. The room seemed to spin around me. Derek had been attending industry events where he knew my professional reputation was being discussed, and he had been actively undermining my credibility. He was positioning himself as the ambitious one in our relationship, while painting me as someone who lacked professional drive. There's something else, Tom continued reluctantly. At the Digital Marketing Summit last month, Derek struck up a conversation with some executives from Henderson and Associates. When your name came up in connection with the Morrison campaign, Derek suggested that most of the strategic work had been done by other team members and that you had mainly handled the administrative aspects. I felt physically sick. Derek had stolen credit for my work while simultaneously diminishing my contributions to the very people who might have offered me future opportunities. He had been systematically destroying my professional reputation while I trusted him with the intimate details of my career challenges and aspirations. The scope of Derek's manipulation was becoming clear, and it extended far beyond our personal relationship. He had been waging a calculated campaign against my professional standing, using his access to my personal and professional life to undermine everything I had worked to build. Every insecurity I had shared with him, every career challenge I had discussed had been turned into ammunition against me. As I sat alone in my office that afternoon, I realized that Derek's betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. He had made it professional, and that changed everything. If Derek wanted to play dirty games with careers and reputations, then I was ready to show him that too could play that game. But I wasn't going to stoop to his level of deception and sabotage. Instead, I was going to beat him by being exactly what he had tried to convince everyone: I wasn't a brilliant strategic and utterly professional marketing expert who could outmaneuver him at every turn. Monday morning brought news that made Derek's betrayal even more personal and devastating. I was sitting in our weekly client strategy meeting when my boss Richard announced that our firm had been invited to pitch for a major account with Morrison Financial Group. The contract was worth over $2 million annually and would establish our agency as a major player in financial sector marketing. This is exactly the kind of prestige client that could transform our entire company, Richard explained to the team. Morrison Financial specifically requested that Lily lead the pitch based on her previous success with their smaller subsidiary campaigns. My heart should have soared at this recognition, but instead I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. If Morrison Financial was considering our agency, then Derek's company was almost certainly competing for the same business. Given Derek's position and his pursuit of the Singapore promotion, he would likely be heavily involved in his firm's competing pitch. After the meeting, I called James Morrison's office under the pretense of scheduling a preliminary discussion about their needs. His assistant was friendly and helpful, providing me with information that confirmed my worst fears. Morrison Financial was indeed considering multiple firms, and Derek's company Sterling and Associates was not only in the running, but was considered the frontrunner due to their existing relationship with Morrison's parent company. Mr. Morrison has been particularly impressed with Derek Patterson's understanding of our corporate culture, the assistant mentioned casually. Derek has provided some valuable insights about market positioning that really resonate with our executive team. My blood ran cold. Derek had been using the confidential information I had shared with him about Morrison's business challenges to position his own company as the ideal choice. Every conversation we'd had about my client work, every strategy I'd discussed with him in the privacy of our relationship had been feeding directly into his company's competing pitch. I spent the rest of the day researching Sterling and Associates' recent client acquisitions, and what I found painted a disturbing pattern. 3 companies that had previously worked with my agency had switched to Sterling in the past 6 months, all of them citing concerns about our strategic direction and what team stability. The timing coincided exactly with Derek's increased access to my professional information and client relationships. That evening, I drove to Derek's apartment with a specific purpose. I needed to see if I could find any evidence of how he was using my confidential client information. Derek was at his weekly basketball game, which gave me time to look around without raising his suspicions. What I found in his home office made me feel sick to my stomach. Derek had copies of client brief strategy documents and budget information from my agency all organized in folders labeled with competing pitch deadlines. He had been systematically stealing my work product and using it to give Sterling and Associates an unfair advantage in client competitions. The most damaging discovery was a document titled Market Positioning Strategies for Morrison Financial, dated just 3 days after I had shared my preliminary ideas with Derek over dinner. The document contained my original analysis, my strategic recommendations, and my innovative approach to Morrison's market challenges, all presented as Derek's original thinking. But the real shock came when I found a handwritten note attached to the Morrison file. Phase 2: discredit Lily Parker and her agency's capability. Suggest client relationship instability due to personnel issues. Recommend Morrison demand new account leadership as condition of contract. Derek wasn't just stealing my work. He was actively planning to destroy my professional reputation as part of securing the Morrison account for his company. His strategy involved convincing Morrison that I was a liability, ensuring that even if they chose my agency, I would be removed from the account I had worked so hard to develop. The scope of Derek's professional sabotage was staggering. He had been using our intimate relationship to gain access to proprietary information, then leveraging that intelligence to undermine both my agency and my personal credibility with potential clients. Every tender moment we had shared, every time I had sought his advice about work challenges, had been an opportunity for him to gather ammunition against me. I photographed the documents with my phone, making sure to capture every detail of Derek's handwritten notes and strategic plans. The evidence was damning, showing a clear pattern of corporate espionage and deliberate professional sabotage that went far beyond personal betrayal. As I prepared to leave Derek's apartment, I heard voices in the hallway outside his door. Derek was returning early from his game, and he wasn't alone. Through the peephole, I could see him with Amanda Peterson, the board member's daughter that Sarah had mentioned. They were standing very close together, and Amanda was wearing what appeared to be an engagement ring. "I can't wait to see Lily's face when she realizes what's happening," Derek was saying to Amanda as he fumbled with his keys. "By the time the Morrison announcement is made, she'll understand exactly how naive she's been about the real world of business." Amanda laughed, though she sounded slightly uncomfortable. "Are you sure this is necessary, Derek? It seems like you're going to a lot of trouble just to prove a point." "It's not about proving a point," Derek replied as he opened the door. "It's about positioning myself for success. Lily was always going to be a temporary situation, but she served her purpose by giving me access to information I needed. Now it's time to move on to someone who can actually help my career instead of holding it back." I slipped out through Derek's bedroom window onto the fire escape, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and determination. Derek thought he had orchestrated the perfect plan to destroy my career while advancing his own, using me as an unwitting accomplice in my own professional sabotage. But Derek had made one crucial miscalculation. He had assumed that I would never discover his deception, that I would accept his version of events, and fade quietly into professional obscurity. He had underestimated my intelligence, my resourcefulness, and my capacity for strategic thinking. As I climbed down the fire escape into the alley behind Derek's building, I was already formulating my own plan. Derek wanted to play games with careers and reputations. Then I was going to show him what happened when someone with real strategic skills decided to fight back. The next morning brought an unexpected opportunity that would change everything. I was reviewing the Morrison financial pitch materials when my assistant Janet knocked on my door with unusual excitement. "Lily, there's a gentleman here to see you. Michael Morrison from Morrison Financial. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's about a sensitive business matter that can't be discussed over the phone." Michael Morrison. James Morrison's son recently returned from Harvard Business School. I had heard his name mentioned in industry circles as someone to watch, a young executive with innovative ideas about corporate ethics and transparency. I had no idea why he would want to meet with me personally, but I was curious enough to agree to see him. Michael was younger than I had expected, probably around 30, with an earnest demeanor that seemed genuine rather than calculated. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had never needed to prove his worth through aggression or manipulation. "Ms. Parker, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I'm here because I've been conducting some research into business practices within our industry, and your name has come up in connection with some concerning patterns I've been investigating." My pulse quickened. "What kind of patterns, Mr. Morrison?" Michael settled into the chair across from my desk and pulled out a leather portfolio. "For the past 6 months, I've been documenting what appears to be systematic corporate espionage involving the theft of marketing strategies and client information. Several agencies have reported losing clients under suspicious circumstances, and there seems to be a common thread connecting these incidents." He opened his portfolio and showed me a chart that mapped client losses across multiple marketing firms. The pattern was clear, and disturbing agencies were losing accounts to Sterling and Associates at an unprecedented rate, often just weeks after Sterling gained some form of access to their internal information. Sterling and Associates appears to have inside information about their competitors' strategies, pricing, and client relationships. Michael continued. "The timing and specificity of their counterproposals suggests they're receiving proprietary intelligence from someone with direct access to competing firms." My mouth went dry as I realized what Michael was describing. Derek's sabotage wasn't limited to my agency or my personal career. He was part of a larger pattern of corporate misconduct that was affecting the entire marketing industry. "Why are you investigating this, Mr. Morrison? And why are you talking to me specifically? Michael's expression grew serious. Because my father's company has been targeted by this same pattern, and I have reason to believe that Sterling and Associates is planning to use stolen information to win our account. More importantly, I think they're planning to destroy the reputation of the person who originally developed the strategies they intend to steal. The room seemed to spin around me. Michael knew about Derek's plan to steal my Morrison strategy and discredit me in the process. But how could he possibly have that information? Mr. Morrison, I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting. I'm suggesting that someone very close to you has been feeding confidential information to Sterling and Associates, and that this same person is planning to use your relationship with them to destroy your professional credibility. I'm also suggesting that you might be the key to stopping this pattern of corporate theft before it destroys more careers and companies. Michael reached into his portfolio and pulled out a photograph that made my heart stop. It was Derek sitting in a restaurant with two men I recognized as senior partners from Sterling and Associates. The timestamp showed the photo had been taken just 2 days ago, and Derek was handing them a folder that looked suspiciously like the client files I had seen in his apartment. "How did you get this?" I whispered. "I've been having Derek Patterson followed for the past 3 weeks. His behavior patterns and his sudden access to confidential information from multiple sources raised red flags that my security team couldn't ignore. We've documented numerous instances of him meeting with Sterling partners and exchanging information that he couldn't possibly have obtained through legitimate channels." The scope of what Michael was revealing was staggering. Derek wasn't just betraying me. He was running a comprehensive espionage operation that was affecting multiple companies and careers across the industry. "What do you want from me, Mr. Morrison?" Michael leaned forward, his expression intense but kind. "I want you to help me stop him. You have access to information and evidence that could expose this entire operation, and you have personal knowledge of Derek's methods that could help us understand the full scope of his activities. Most importantly, you have the right to see justice done for what he's done to your career and your life." As Michael outlined his investigation, I realized that he had been watching Derek's activities far more closely than I had imagined. He had documentation of Derek's meetings with Sterling partners, evidence of stolen client information being exchanged, and proof that Derek was planning to use his relationship with me as the final piece of his strategy to win the Morrison account. "There's something else," Michael said quietly. "Derek is planning to publicly announce his engagement to Amanda Peterson at my father's annual charity gala next Friday. He intends to position this announcement as evidence of his commitment to family values and long-term stability qualities that he's been telling our board are lacking in his competitors." The cruelty of Derek's plan was breathtaking. He was going to use his betrayal of me as a selling point to win the account I had worked so hard to develop, presenting his abandonment of our relationship as evidence of his professional integrity and commitment to success. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Morrison?" Michael's smile was grim but determined. "I'm proposing that we give Derek exactly what he wants. Let him think his plan is working perfectly right up until the moment we expose him publicly for the fraud he really is. And I'm proposing that you attend the charity gala as my guest so that Derek can see exactly how wrong he was about your value and your capabilities." As Michael outlined his counter-strategy, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. For the first time since discovering Derek's betrayal, I wasn't just reacting to his manipulation. I was being offered the chance to take control of the situation and turn Derek's own tactics against him. "Why would you do this for me, Mr. Morrison? You barely know me." Michael's expression softened. "Because I've spent the past month reviewing your work, studying your strategic thinking, and analyzing your approach to client relationships. Derek Patterson is trying to destroy someone who represents everything that's best about our industry: intelligence, integrity, innovation, and genuine care for client success. If we let him succeed, we're telling every other manipulator in the business that talent and ethics don't matter as much as cunning and betrayal." As I looked at Michael Morrison, I realized that this was what respect looked like when it was genuine. Unlike Derek's performative attention and calculated charm, Michael's regard for my work and my character felt solid and real. He valued my expertise because he understood it, not because it served his purposes. "What do you need from me?" I asked. Michael's smile was the first thing that had made me feel hopeful in weeks. "I need you to be exactly who you are, brilliant, strategic, and completely professional. Derek is about to learn that underestimating you was the biggest mistake of his career." The following week unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of strategy and preparation. Michael and I met daily to coordinate our approach, and I began to understand the full scope of Derek's misconduct. Michael's investigation had uncovered evidence that Derek had been systematically stealing intellectual property from at least 6 different marketing firms over the past year, using information from personal relationships, social events, and professional networks to gain unfair advantages for Sterling and Associates. "The pattern is always the same," Michael explained as we reviewed his documentation in his downtown office. "Derek identifies someone with access to valuable information, cultivates a relationship with them, extracts what he needs, then finds a way to discredit them professionally so they can't expose his methods." Michael's office was a study in understated sophistication, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district and walls lined with books on business ethics and corporate governance. Unlike Derek's space, which was designed to intimidate and impress, Michael's office felt like a place where serious work got done by someone who cared about doing it right. "How many other people has he done this to?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Michael pulled out a thick file containing what appeared to be dozens of documents. "We've identified at least 12 potential victims over the past 18 months. Women in marketing, public relations, and business development who had relationships with Derek or his associates and who later found themselves professionally isolated or discredited in ways that benefited Sterling's business interests." The systematic nature of Derek's predatory behavior was chilling. I hadn't been his first victim, and I wouldn't have been his last if Michael hadn't intervened. Derek had turned personal relationships into weapons of corporate warfare, leaving a trail of damaged careers and shattered trust in his wake. As we worked together to build our case, I found myself impressed by Michael's approach to business and relationships. Unlike Derek, who seemed to view every interaction as a transaction, Michael treated people with genuine respect and consideration. When he asked for my insights about Derek's methods, he listened carefully and took notes, treating my observations as valuable intelligence rather than emotional venting. "There's something you should know about the gala," Michael said on Thursday afternoon as we finalized our preparations. "Derek has been telling everyone that he expects you to make a scene when he announces his engagement to Amanda. He's positioned it as evidence that you're emotionally unstable and professionally unreliable." I felt a familiar flash of anger at Derek's continued manipulation, but it was tempered by something stronger: anticipation. Derek's assumption that I would react emotionally to his announcement showed how little he truly understood me. He had confused my previous trust and vulnerability with weakness, failing to recognize the strength it had taken to build my career and establish my professional reputation. "Actually, that works perfectly for what we have planned," I replied, and Michael's smile told me he was thinking the same thing. We spent Thursday evening rehearsing our presentation for the gala. Michael had arranged for us to have access to the hotel's audiovisual equipment, ostensibly for a surprise tribute to his father's charitable work. In reality, we would be using the technology to present our evidence of Derek's corporate espionage to an audience that included some of the most influential people in the financial and marketing industries. As we practiced our timing and coordination, I was struck by how different it felt to work with someone who truly valued my contributions. Michael didn't try to take credit for my ideas or minimize my role in developing our strategy. He treated me as an equal partner in both the investigation and the presentation, recognizing that my insights into Derek's methods were crucial to the success of our plan. Friday morning brought a delivery that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Michael had arranged for Catherine Williams to attend the gala as his guest, along with several other marketing industry leaders who had been affected by Sterling's questionable business practices. The gala would become an impromptu gathering of everyone Derek had tried to manipulate or deceive, though he wouldn't realize it until it was too late. "I wanted you to have support from people who understand your work and respect your capabilities," Michael explained when I thanked him for including Catherine. "Derek has spent months trying to isolate you professionally. Tonight you'll be surrounded by colleagues who know your true worth. As I prepared for the gala that evening, I felt a sense of calm determination that surprised me. For weeks, I had been reacting to Derek's manipulation, trying to defend myself against his attacks and rebuild what he had tried to destroy. Tonight, I would finally take the offensive, using his own tactics of surprise and strategic revelation against him. The dress I chose was professional yet elegant, a deep emerald green that complemented my complexion and projected confidence without being flashy. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a successful marketing executive who belonged in rooms full of industry leaders, not someone desperate to prove her worth or win back a man who had never deserved her in the first place. Michael picked me up in a classic black sedan, looking sophisticated in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. As we drove toward the Grand Plaza Hotel, where this entire saga had begun weeks earlier, I felt a strange sense of completing a circle. Derek's public humiliation of me at his company party had set all of this in motion, and now we were returning to the same venue to deliver his reckoning. "Are you ready for this?" Michael asked as we pulled up to the hotel's entrance. I looked at the elegant facade of the building where Derek had first shown me his true nature, and I felt a surge of confidence that came from finally understanding my own strength. I've been ready for this my entire career. I just didn't know it until now. As we walked into the hotel lobby, I caught a glimpse of Derek across the room, resplendent in his formal wear and clearly holding court with a group of sterling associates. He looked confident and relaxed, completely unaware that his carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down around him. For just a moment, our eyes met across the crowded lobby, and I saw Derek's expression shift from surprise to confusion to something that might have been fear. He had expected me to be broken and defeated by his betrayal, but instead I was walking into his moment of triumph as an equal, accompanied by someone who clearly valued and respected me. Derek's world was about to change forever, and I was the one who was going to change it. The Morrison Foundation's annual charity gala was everything Derek had probably hoped it would be, an elegant gathering of the city's most influential business leaders held in the Grand Plaza's opulent ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over hundreds of guests in formal attire, all gathered to celebrate philanthropic achievements and network with industry titans. Derek stood near the front of the room, radiant in his confidence and completely oblivious to what was coming. Amanda Peterson was at his side, beautiful and gracious, wearing a stunning engagement ring that caught the light every time she gestured. They looked like the perfect power couple, exactly the image Derek had been cultivating for his career advancement. Michael and I entered the ballroom together, and I felt the subtle shift in attention that occurred when people noticed our arrival. Several guests recognized Michael, of course, but I was surprised by the number of industry colleagues who approached me with warm greetings and genuine enthusiasm for my recent work. Catherine Williams was among the first to reach us, and her presence immediately elevated my confidence. "Lily, you look absolutely radiant. Michael has told me so much about your insights into industry practices. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on some of the challenges we've been discussing." As Catherine and I talked, I noticed Derek watching us from across the room. His expression had shifted from surprise to something approaching alarm as he realized that I wasn't isolated or defeated as he had expected. Instead, I was surrounded by respected colleagues who clearly valued my professional opinions and enjoyed my company. James Morrison took the stage as the evening's host, delivering opening remarks about the Foundation's mission and thanking the generous donors who made their work possible. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Tonight we're not just celebrating charitable giving," James announced to the assembled crowd. "We're also celebrating the business ethics and professional integrity that make our community's success possible. These values are the foundation upon which all meaningful achievement is built." The irony of his words wasn't lost on anyone who knew what was about to unfold. Derek had built his recent success on the complete opposite of the ethics and integrity James was praising, and he was about to be exposed in front of everyone who mattered in his professional world. Michael approached the stage as the evening's program continued, ostensibly to introduce a special presentation about his father's charitable work. But I knew that our moment was approaching, and I felt a calm focus settle over me, like armor. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael began, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's excellent acoustics. Tonight, I'd like to share some insights about business practices that affect our entire industry. These insights come from recent research into corporate ethics and intellectual property protection conducted in partnership with some of our community's most talented marketing professionals. Derek's face went pale as Michael's words sank in. He was beginning to understand that something was very wrong with the evening's script, but he still didn't grasp the full scope of what was about to happen to him. Michael gestured for me to join him at the front of the room, and I walked forward with steady steps, feeling the attention of hundreds of influential people focusing on me. This was the moment Derek had tried to prevent me standing before an audience of industry leaders, recognized as a professional equal, rather than dismissed as a personal footnote. "I'd like you to meet Lily Parker," Michael continued, a senior marketing director whose innovative work with Morrison Financial caught our attention and whose recent experiences have illuminated some troubling patterns in our industry. I took the microphone Michael offered, looking out over the audience of executives, entrepreneurs, and business leaders who represented the pinnacle of professional success in our city. Many of them had heard Derek's version of events about me, but tonight they would hear the truth. "Thank you, Michael. Over the past several months, I've discovered something that should concern everyone in this room who values fair competition and ethical business practices. There are individuals in our industry who have turned personal relationships into weapons of corporate espionage, stealing intellectual property, and deliberately destroying careers to gain unfair advantages for their companies." The room was completely silent now, with every person focused on my words. I could see Derek near the back, his face a mask of barely controlled panic as he realized that his carefully constructed facade was about to be demolished. I began presenting the evidence that Michael and I had gathered, using the hotel's audiovisual system to display documentation of Derek's systematic theft of marketing strategies, client information, and proprietary business intelligence. Each slide revealed another layer of his deception, another example of his willingness to destroy others for his own advancement. "This pattern of corporate theft has affected multiple firms in our industry." I continued, my voice steady and professional. "The perpetrator has used intimate access to confidential information, obtained through personal relationships, to give his company unfair advantages in client competitions and contract negotiations." As I detailed Derek's methods and showed evidence of his meetings with Sterling Associates, I watched his carefully constructed world collapse around him. Several people in the audience were taking notes, and I could see phones being discreetly raised to photograph the evidence on the screens. The climax came when I displayed copies of Derek's handwritten notes about his plan to discredit me professionally while stealing my work on the Morrison account. His own words in his own handwriting laid out his strategy for using our personal relationship to destroy my career and advance his own. "Ladies and gentlemen," I concluded, "this is what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness and professional ethics for personal vulnerability. But as you can see tonight, the truth has a way of emerging, and justice has a way of prevailing." The applause that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just polite recognition. It was the sound of an entire industry acknowledging that integrity had triumphed over manipulation, that talent had overcome treachery. Derek had disappeared from the ballroom sometime during my presentation, but Amanda Peterson approached me afterward with tears in her eyes. "I had no idea," she said quietly. "I thought Derek was just ambitious and focused on his career. I never realized he was destroying other people to build his own success." James Morrison shook my hand with genuine warmth and respect. "Ms. Parker, your courage in exposing these practices has done a tremendous service to our entire business community. I hope you'll consider working with us to develop new protocols for protecting intellectual property and preventing this kind of exploitation in the future." As the evening wound down, I found myself surrounded by colleagues, potential clients, and industry leaders who had witnessed Derek's exposure and wanted to express their support for my actions. Catherine offered me the consultancy position again, but with significantly better terms and a leadership role in developing ethical business practices across the marketing industry. Michael appeared at my side as the crowd began to thin his expression, a mixture of satisfaction and admiration. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "Derek never stood a chance against someone with your combination of intelligence, integrity, and strength." For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace with myself and my choices. Derek had tried to destroy my career and my confidence, but instead he had inadvertently revealed my own capabilities and strength. His betrayal had hurt me deeply, but surviving it had shown me exactly who I was and what I was capable of achieving. As Michael and I left the hotel together, I realized that Derek's greatest miscalculation hadn't been underestimating my professional abilities or my strategic thinking. His greatest mistake had been assuming that someone with genuine integrity and strength could be permanently defeated by manipulation and betrayal. Tonight had proven him spectacularly wrong about that assumption and about me. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of my own marketing consultancy, looking out over the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows that sparkled in the morning sunlight. The view was spectacular, but it paled in comparison to the satisfaction I felt when I considered how far I had traveled since that humiliating night at Derek's company party. Parker's strategic marketing had grown from a bold idea into a thriving business faster than I had ever imagined possible. After the Gala exposure of Derek's misconduct, clients had approached me with opportunities I never could have anticipated. Companies wanted to work with someone who had demonstrated both exceptional professional capabilities and unshakable ethical standards under pressure. My assistant buzzed the intercom to announce that Michael Morrison had arrived for our monthly business review meeting. Over the past 6 months, Michael and I had developed both a strong professional partnership and something deeper that was growing into a genuine romantic relationship built on mutual respect and shared values. "Good morning, successful entrepreneur," Michael said as he entered my office carrying coffee from our favorite downtown cafe and wearing the easy smile that had become one of my favorite sights. "Good morning, ethical business partner," I replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Michael had not only become Morrison Financial's preferred marketing consultant, but he had also invested in my company as a silent partner, believing in my vision for revolutionizing how marketing firms approached client relationships and industry ethics. Our monthly meetings had become something I looked forward to with anticipation rather than anxiety. Unlike my previous relationship with Derek, where every professional interaction had been shadowed by manipulation and hidden agendas, my partnership with Michael was characterized by transparency, trust, and genuine collaboration. "I have some interesting news about our mutual acquaintance," Michael said as we settled into the comfortable chairs I had arranged near the windows. The investigation into Sterling and Associates' business practices concluded last week. I had been following the developments loosely, but I had deliberately avoided becoming too involved in the legal proceedings that followed Derek's exposure. My focus had been on building something positive rather than dwelling on the destruction he had caused. "Derek has been terminated from Sterling and Associates," Michael continued, "and the company has been fined heavily for corporate espionage and intellectual property theft. They're also facing multiple civil lawsuits from the marketing firms they defrauded over the past 2 years." I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness at this news. Derek had brought these consequences on himself through his deliberate choices and calculated cruelty, but I couldn't help feeling sorry for the person he might have been if he had chosen integrity over manipulation. "What's he doing now?" I asked, surprised by my own curiosity about Derek's fate. "He's in therapy, according to Amanda," Michael replied. "She broke off their engagement after the gala, but she stayed in touch with him as a friend while he works through some serious personal issues. Apparently, the exposure of his behavior forced him to confront some deep-seated insecurities and patterns that had been driving his need to control and diminish other people." Amanda Peterson had become an unexpected ally and friend over the past months. After learning the truth about Derek's manipulative behavior, she had reached out to apologize for her unwitting role in his plans. Amanda was intelligent, kind, and genuinely committed to using her family's influence to promote ethical business practices. "Amanda mentioned that Derek specifically asked her to tell you that he's sorry," Michael continued. He apparently understands now how much damage he caused, not just to your career, but to your trust and sense of security. He knows that an apology can't undo what he did, but he wanted you to know that he recognizes the full scope of his actions. I considered this information quietly sipping my coffee and watching the city come alive below us. Derek's apology was something I had never expected to receive, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I had moved so far beyond the pain he had caused that his regret felt almost irrelevant to my current life. "I'm glad he's getting help," I said finally. "But I'm more interested in talking about the positive changes we're seeing in the industry." Michael's smile told me he had anticipated this response. One of the things I valued most about our relationship was his understanding that I preferred to focus on building solutions rather than dwelling on problems. Our consulting work had led to the development of new industry standards for protecting intellectual property and preventing the kind of exploitation Derek had practiced. Several major firms had adopted our protocols, and we were seeing measurable improvements in how companies handled confidential information and personal relationships in professional settings. "Speaking of positive changes," Michael said, pulling out an elegant envelope from his jacket pocket, "I have something I've been wanting to discuss with you, but I wanted to wait until the business was fully established and we both knew where we stood professionally." My heart began beating faster as I recognized the nervous excitement in Michael's expression. Over the past months, our relationship had deepened naturally, from professional collaboration to personal friendship to something that felt like the beginning of a lifelong partnership. "Lily, I know we've both seen what happens when personal and professional relationships get tangled up in manipulation and hidden agendas." Michael began, his voice more serious than usual. "What we have is different. It's built on respect, trust, and genuine admiration for each other's character and capabilities." He opened the envelope and pulled out a small velvet box that made my breath catch in my throat. But instead of opening it immediately, he set it gently on the table between us. "I'm not asking you to answer today," Michael continued. "I just want you to know that I love you, I respect you, and I believe we could build something together that's as strong professionally as it is personally. When you're ready to consider taking that step, I'll be here." I looked at the small box, then at Michael's earnest face, and felt a sense of completeness I had never experienced before. This was what a real partnership looked like. Someone who valued my independence enough to give me time and space to make my own decision, who respected my career enough to separate business from personal emotions, who loved me enough to trust that I would choose what was right for both of us. "Michael," I said quietly, "I don't need time to think about this. 6 months ago, I had been a woman whose confidence was shattered by betrayal and whose career was threatened by manipulation. Today, I was a successful entrepreneur, a respected industry leader, and someone who understood her own worth well enough to recognize genuine love when it was offered." As I reached for the velvet box, I realized that Derek's betrayal had actually been a gift in disguise. It had forced me to discover my own strength to build my own success and to understand the difference between someone who wanted to possess me and someone who wanted to partner with me. The ring was beautiful, but it was the man offering it who took my breath away. Michael Morrison represented everything I had learned to value: integrity, intelligence, respect, and the kind of love that made both people stronger, rather than diminishing one to elevate the other. "Yes," I said simply, and Michael's face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto my finger. As we sat together in my office, looking out over the city where I had built my new life, I reflected on how much had changed since that terrible night at Derek's company party. I had learned that true strength comes not from avoiding betrayal, but from surviving it with your integrity intact. I had discovered that the best revenge against someone who tries to diminish you is simply becoming the fullest expression of who you were always meant to be. Derek had tried to convince me that I should be grateful for his attention, that my career was less important than his, that I was lucky to be claimed by someone who saw me as a liability. But Michael had shown me what it felt like to be valued by someone who saw my professional success as something to celebrate rather than something to tolerate. The story that had begun with humiliation and betrayal was ending with triumph and love, not because I had destroyed Derek or gotten revenge against him, but because I had refused to let his vision of my worth become my reality. I had chosen to fight for my own value, to build my own success, and to demand the respect I deserved. As I looked at my engagement ring sparkling in the morning sunlight, I knew that this was just the beginning of the next chapter of my story. And this time, I would be writing it with someone who truly understood that the greatest partnerships are built on equality, respect, and the shared commitment to help each other become the best versions of themselves. The phone rang, interrupting our celebration, and my assistant's voice came through the speaker with excitement. "Lily, I have Catherine Williams on line 1. She says she has a proposal for an international expansion that you're going to want to hear." Michael squeezed my hand and smiled. Ready to conquer the world, partner. I looked at this man who had helped me reclaim my strength at the business I had built from my own determination, and at the future that stretched ahead of us, filled with possibilities I couldn't have imagined 6 months ago. "I've been ready my whole life," I replied. "I just needed to remember that I was worth fighting for." Now I want to hear from all of you who've been following this journey. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to make you feel like you should be grateful for treatment that was beneath your worth? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself and demand the respect you deserved? Share your stories in the comments below, because your experiences might inspire someone else who's facing their own Derek right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know it made an impact. Subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations and building the life you truly deserve. And share this with someone who might need to hear that they're worth so much more than anyone who tries to diminish them could ever understand. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to triumph. Remember that you have more power than you know, more strength than anyone can take away, and more value than anyone who tries to convince you otherwise could ever diminish. Keep fighting for yourself. Keep believing in your worth, and never settle for anyone who asks you to be grateful for less than you deserve. Until next time, keep writing your own story with the respect, love, and success that you've always been worthy of receiving.